We will continue the topic learning and culture from the chapter the Central Islamic lands. So Islamic philosopher now they are a great influence or under the influence of the Greek philosophy. So the Umayyad and the Abbasid caliphs they translated Greek and Syriac book in Arabia. So, if we talk about, they commissioned Christian translators and the work of Aristotle, you can see element of Euclid's and Ptolemy Almagest were brought to the attention to the Arabic reading. And you can see the Indian work also. You can see astronomy, mathematics, medicines. They were translated into Arabic during the same period. So the study of this new subject, it promoted critical inquiry so that we could consider the merit and the demerit. So we also take many beliefs and practices for granted without questioning it. When we subject such domain to critical thinking, it means we are pursuing a special kind of rational inquiry, which begin with the doubting and questioning what has been taken for granted and demonstrating that we don't know what we think we know. So the scholars, you can see here, they were influenced by the Greek philosophy here to defend Islamic traditions. So first come here Mutsila. Okay, the scholars with a theological bent of life. It means those who study about religion, belief, faith, practice, and experience, especially the study of God and of God relation to the world. They used Greek logics and method of reasoning, kalam, to defend Islamic belief. So the philosopher or the falsafa, the posed wider questions and they provided fresh answers. Now comes very important Ibn Sina, who was a doctor by profession, a philosopher. He did not believe in the resurrections of the body on the day of judgment. So there is a belief that the rising of the dead or the dead will alive on the day of Qiyamah or the end of the world. So he met with strong opposition from the theologians. Okay, his medical writing was madly read. So if we talk about the most influential book here was Al Qanun fil Tib. It means canon of medicines or the principle of medicines. So canon of medicine here is a manuscript of 10 lakhs word that listed 760 drugs sold by the pharmacist of his day and included notes of his own experimented conducted in the hospital or Bimaristan. Even the book, it emphasized the importance of diet in our life or dietetics. It means the knowledge that is concerned with diets and its effects on health. So healing through dietary regulation or we are recovering through diets. Even the influence of climates and environment on our health and the contagious nature of some disease which we talk about communicable diseases spread from one person to another. So here you can see the canon of medicines. This book was used as a textbook in Europe. Okay, who and where the authors were called Avicenna, because Ibsena was popularly known as Avicenna. So whoever the author of Europe read the text of Ibn Sina was called Avicenna. So just before his death, the scientist and the poet, here comes Umar Khayyam, was said to be reading the canon of medicine. So his gold toothpick was found between two pages of the chapter on metaphysics. So in medieval, you can see Islamic societies now find languages and creative imaginations. Okay, here comes were among the most appreciated qualities in a person. So first we talk about the fine languages and then the creative imaginations. When this quality, they raised a person communications to the level of adab. Adab, which generally means in the context of behavior, refers to prescribed Islamic etiquettes, refinement, good manners, and you can see moral and decorum. Here, this term implies literary and cultural refinements, or you can see removing impurities. So, adab here, the form of expressions, it included poetry that we call nazm, or that is orderly arranged, and the prose, which we call nathar or scattered word. So, which were made to be memorized and used when there is an occasion. So, the most popular poetic composition of the pre-Islamic origin was the Qasida, the ode, that was developed by the poets of Abbasid period to glorify the achievements of their patterns who gave patronage to the author. So here we can see that poet of Persian origins, they revitalized poet of Persian origin, they revitalized and reinvented the Arabic poetry and challenge the cultural hegemony, it means their leadership or dominances. Here comes one, Abu Nuwas, who was a Persian origin. He wrote on the content which was forbidden in Islam. So a new theme he composed, it was such as wine and may love with intention of celebrating pleasure. So after Nuwas, you can see Abu Nuwas, the poet addressed the objects of their passion in the masculine denoting male, even if the later was female, the second one was female. So following the same tradition, the Sufi glorified the intoxication caused by the wine of mystical love. So by the time you can see they conquered the Iran or Persia, and the Pahlavi, the language of the sacred books of ancient Iran, it was in the decay. So you can find, then you can see a new version of Pahlavi was known as New Persia, with a huge Arabic vocabulary soon developed. So the formation of the sultanates in Khurasan and Transoxania took New Persia to a great cultural height. Now come the Samanid court poet Rudaki, very important. He was considered as the father of the new Persian poetry, which included new form in the poetry such as ghazal, and then you can see rubai or quatrain. So what is this rubai? It's a 4-line stanza, okay, in which the first 2 line it set the stage, yani sama बांध देती है. The third is they finally poised or they composed, okay, finally composed, and then you can see the fourth here is the deliver to the point or come to the point. So when we talk about the matter, here it is unrestricted and it can be used to express. If we are talking about rubai, it used to express the beauty of a beloved. You can see they praise their patterns who give them shelter as well as support financially, or express the thought of the philosopher. So the rubai, it reached its zenith or in its peak in the hand of Umar Khayyam, okay, who was also an astronomer and mathematicians who live in various times in Bukhara, Samarkand and Isfahan in Persia. So at the beginning of the 11th century, you can see Ghazni, it became the center of literary life or literary learning hub. Okay, so poets, they were naturally attracted by the glamours of the palace or the king court. Then you can see even the rulers, they too realize the importance of patronizing arts and learning for enhance their prestige. So Mahmud of Ghazni, he gathered around he was gathered around himself a group of poets who composed anthologies, a collection of song or musical composition, okay, and then he can find an epic poetry which we'll call Matnavi, that is a narrative work of poetry with a romantic themes. So the most outstanding or the popular work was of Firdausi, who took 30 years to complete the Sahanama. So it is a book of kings and epics of 50,000 couplets. So here you can see that is a book of king and epic of 50,000 couplet. A couplet is a two-line poetry, okay, that follow each other, and it is usually in rhymed. So it is one of the world longest epic poems created by a single poet here. Okay, the Shahnama tells the mythical and historical part of Iran from the creation of the world, from where the world began, and then you can see until the Islamic conquest of Iran and in the 7th century. So it was in keeping with the Ghaznavid tradition that Persian later became the language of administration as well as culture in Persia. Now we see the book of moral and amusement. Here comes a booksellers of Baghdad, Ibn Nadim. Okay. So it described a large number of book, okay, in his catalogue written in prose for moral education and amusement. So if we talk about the oldest of these is a collection of animal fables. So fables are the short story typically with animal as a character, which later convey a moral lesson, which was called Kalila wa Dimna. Okay, it is called Kalila wa Dimna, two jackals who were the leading characters. Okay, so if we talk about which is Arabic translation of Pahlavi version of the Panch Tantra. So when we talk about the Panch Tantra, it is one of the oldest collections of fables in the world, short stories, okay, with animals as a character. Later they convey moral messages. So the Persian, they translated the Panch Tantra, and from the Middle Persian it was translated into Arabia, that is we call Kalila wa Dimna. So now we talk about the most widespread and lasting literary work are the stories of the hero adventurers, such as Alexander, Al-Sikandar, and then you can Sindbad the traveler, and the unhappy lover such as Caius, known as Majnu or Madman. So these have developed over the century into oral and written traditions. So the Thousands and One Night is another collection of story. You can see by a single narrator. Here is the Scheherazade to her husband night after night. So she narrates a story to her husband night after night. So the collection was originally in Indo-Persian, and then you can see translated in Arabic in Baghdad in the 8th century. So more stories it was added later in Cairo during the Mamluk period, here the slave dynasty. So these stories it depict human being on different types. Here you can see stupid, gullibles, okay, those who are believing and trusting people too easily, and then they were easily cheated. And then you can see the crafty, the generous, kind or liberal. So and were told to be educate and entertain. So in his Kitab al-Bukhala, the book of misers, you can see Zahiz of Basra. Okay, here it's he collected amusing anecdotes. Anecdotes are the short, amusing, interesting story about an incident or person. Okay, here about the misers and also analyzed greed. So at the end we saw Kitab al-Bukhala, which is you can see Zahiz of Basra composed it, and in which you can see it was a collected amusing anecdote which was about misers, and he also analyzes greed. So students, in this video we have taken a portion from the topic culture and learning.